Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Series 6 Paranormal Podcast. I am your host, Jay Hill, with my co-host, Shane Peak. How's it going, Shane?
Yep. Hey, you're there.
Yeah. So I had a great weekend, actually. I went to Spirit and Spring in Broadhead, Wisconsin. Actually, the Paracon created by Nick Sarlo from Shadow Hunters on Paraflix, and it was a great event. And yeah, I have some stuff on my pages that people can allude to that and to look and check it out. And you can check out some of the teams that I talked to, like we've had on our show in the past. So yeah, but tonight actually we have an awesome two gentlemen that are hosting their own website called Haunted US. And if I'm not mistaken, they're kind of local. They're in Wisconsin, so I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I know Mitch is. So, well, let's get him on and have a little chat. Hi, Mitch. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, how's it going?
That's going good. So, like I was saying before, and there's, being in Wisconsin, here and having, you guys are from Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So
That's cool.
So it's good to have local boys in the chat, just because the fact that Wisconsin's awesome. So
Indeed.
Wisconsin is without it's got quite a few hauntings and places to go to check out, and there's a lot of places that I could only dream of going to, but you guys specialize in finding locations and basically putting them on the map on your website, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, we're always looking to partner with locations and share their story while still giving them some control over that. We work closely with them specifically to pull those facts out and make sure that what we're presenting on our website isn't hearsay or rumor. It's what's actually coming from those locations specifically.
Right.
Yeah, we appreciate that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paranormal is
right.
filled with everything.
Yeah,
oh, definitely.
So Mitch, tell our listeners a little bit of how you kind of came up with this and with Brandon together, and just kind of give us a little bit of a rundown, little bit of what you do too, a little bit about your background as well.
Yeah, so I guess a good place to start would probably be how we came together to start this concept. We had started off investigating other locations with another group of folks, and it was actually during a road trip to one of the locations. I believe it was Edinburgh Manor down in Iowa. We had a good couple hours, just him and I in the car, and he pitched me this idea because he knew that I was a writer, and he pitched me this concept of Haunted US, like all those websites that at least him and I had been really used to in the early 2000s, like Shadowlands.net.
Shadowlands, yep.
Shadowlands, where it was a great place to find a little bit of information on locations, but we always left those experiences wanting something more. And the idea behind Haunted US was to provide that something more to people like us today who are trolling the internet, trying to find the next great ghost story or something that they can experience themselves. And so we just connected at pretty much exactly the right time and started spitballing ideas and producing the prototypes of what we wanted articles, web pages, home pages, all that to look like. And then sooner or later, it all came together into the hauntedus.com you can see today.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I've checked out the website. It's pretty cool. I mean, you've got quite a few on there.
Yeah, I did. I was just looking at it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you like
very
it.
Nice. Yeah. So talk about a little bit about your guys' style in investigating. I think that not everybody's the same way they investigate. So
Definitely.
I'm sure that, go ahead and tell us a little bit about how your style is a good fit for what you guys do.
So it's actually, it's really interesting that we pride ourselves on not being predominantly an investigation team. Mm-hmm. We are first and foremost hauntedus.com and our content. So a lot of our Pre-investigation is the meat and potatoes. What we'll be doing is talking to the location, speaking to people in town who are familiar with it, visiting local libraries. The number of times that I'm getting photo and video, and Mitch has requested that I just like drop him at the library on the way is kind of astonishing. So
it's kind of cool though.
Definitely, and we pride ourselves in that information. We really, that's our goal, is to present the best quality information on these places, and that's what we end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get into the location, Mitch and I actually have different investigation styles between each other, let alone another group. I am anti. I shouldn't say anti. I'm not a huge fan of ITC. So
okay.
I find myself in a position where I'm like, I can kind of debunk that though. Like, is this our bias that's getting us to follow what a spirit box might be saying, or what an Ovilus is coming back with? Not to say that Mitch isn't skeptical, but ultimately I think there's a differing level of what we're willing to follow in an investigation.
Right.
Yep.
And do you agree with that, Mitch?
Yeah, I would say we have our differences in the way we investigate, but I think they complement each other in a lot of ways. I think particularly when you're working with a duo, you kind of want the skeptical person and the person who's open to the weird and the strange and the odd. And
yeah.
A mantra that's often repeated while we are investigating is embrace maybe.
Yeah.
Embrace maybe. That's a nice one. I like it.
Embrace maybe. I'll put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's how me and Shane work. He's a science, and he's also a skeptic. I'm more of the spiritual medium, this side, the investigations, and he does those as well. And so when we come together with this show, it's just kind of so we can hear other people's skepticism, and that's a great topic for Shane, the science aspect of it. And so people kind of get that spectrum. So you guys doing what you do actually works because of the fact that you guys are different, and you guys have that different style, and you guys reach out to, kind of reach other people in different ways for the way you investigate. Now, does it come across on the website similar? I haven't got too in depth with that, but I mean, does it kind of come across the same way you described it?
So again, our investigations don't really make the website. Our content is predominantly history. We intend to launch some further studies of things like investigations coming up. It's not a huge priority for us, but we would like to start producing articles on classical hauntings and those sorts of things in coming months.
Right. The history aspect, and especially in certain locations, is sometimes more of a better read than it is a better watch.
Definitely.
Yes.
And some people, want to know all the ins and outs of a certain haunted locations, everything. But when they can actually read it on paper, it brings it more to life to me, I think. That's just my opinion. But I mean,
sure.
Watching it on a TV program or even a video of it, it's not quite the same. It's interesting, don't get me wrong, and it's really cool. And, it's just some of the history, the more history is written down, I think you can read it that way. And, it's something that's fascinating to me. Now, let's talk about Wisconsin. You have, of course I have to go to Wisconsin. So let's pick your top two that you have that you really like.
Yeah. So I think for me at least, it would be. Ooh, I love the Brumder Mansion. I've had the opportunity to investigate the Brumder Mansion a number of times, and it rarely fails to have a spooky night. Second up, newcomer to the game, Broadhead Manor.
Yeah, I was just there, so yeah.
Bill's setup down there is absolutely fantastic, and Bill's a great guy. So
yeah, he is. So yeah, that building in itself was pretty cool. Just being in it, a lot of eyes on me when I walked in. So it was just kind of, it was kind of a creepy place, but it was cool.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? You could feel the energy, even on the grounds. I mean, even on when I was walking out of the car and I got to the curb, this voice in my head said, "Do not walk on the grass." And what did I do? I walked on the grass. I was like, "Oh crap!" And I told the story to Dan Norville from Expedition Entity, and he says, "Oh yeah, that's probably the principal." He says he's around here too,
Mhm.
and so I was like, "Yeah, I already got scolded, and I'm not even in school." You know, I go back to a school, and then so.
We had a really interesting experience up in the music room that they had, like kind of the multi-level music room.
That room was talked about a lot.
Yeah, we had an EDI that was sitting in the center of the room. We hadn't touched it. We hadn't been in that room the entire night that we were there. Last maybe, what would you say, Mitch? Last like 15 minutes before we left, we hopped up there. We were gonna just grab the EDI. But we were like, well, let's take a minute, and we didn't get a chance to hang out in here at all. We start asking questions and kind of settle ourselves in. All of a sudden, the EDI starts making this high-pitched sound. It's not one of the alarms on it. It's not anything we can really describe an EDI as doing. EDIs are usually very predictable devices.
Yes.
And it's just wigging out and keeps going for a little while and then just stops.
Yeah.
I have no idea what was going on with the thing. But
so did you look at the data log off of that? That's
nothing
that's the
weird.
whole purpose.
Yeah. Nothing strange, completely, nominal with the rest of the data set.
Yeah, that goes with the story that they were talking with the Expedition Entity was showing a video of when they were up on the second, I think it was the music room, and I think that they were talking about something and their battery's dying. I'm not quite sure if I'm remembering it right, but I mean, there's some type of energy that is up there. And even when one of my friends came down from there, that was up there most of the afternoon, she said it's just energy just gets sucked out of that spot. And so when you said that music room, I was like, oh yeah, so I heard a lot about that yesterday, so. Yeah,
it's also, a part of me, the skeptical part of me is like, this room is kind of creepy to get to. You have to go either through a kind of odd little side hallway, or you're coming up these back stairs behind the stage. And if it hadn't been for a device actually sounding off and doing something very strange, I don't know that I would have picked up on any of that.
All right, Mitch, same question. What are your two favorite out of Wisconsin?
Two favorite places out of Wisconsin. One would have to be the Mabel Tainer Theater up in Menominee.
Okay.
It's just a magnificent building. If you've never been, if you're ever in the area, I recommend stopping in there, even if it's literally just to stop in, just to see it once, because it's worth even that. And
make sure to check out the article on hauntedus.com.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Because Brandon's photos of that location really capture the splendor of it. I've been to a lot of reportedly haunted theaters just in Wisconsin, and there's the one that stands out aesthetic wise, historical preservation wise, and claim and ghost story wise is across the board. Mabel Tainer Theater.
Okay.
Their claims are very well rooted in the building's history, and the building's history is very well recorded. So you can, if there's a claim in that building, chances are you or someone is going to be able to trace it to, what the space used to be at exactly a particular point in time, and be able to guess or assume who or what the entity is creating that activity, which is something you don't get in every location.
Right.
And it comes all together to be a very great place to visit and a very great place to investigate. And the other one in Wisconsin is one probably we just did recently. That's the Lincoln Tallman House in Janesville. I'm born and raised in Janesville, and I've been trying to get in with the Tallman House to investigate for about as long as I've been investigating.
Okay.
And we were just finally able to get in to do an article for Haunted US, which came out a few weeks ago. And that experience was really one of a kind. We had our fair share of adventures just trying to get shots and everything that we needed for the site itself, because that was back on the 28th of January, which was the huge snowstorm that blew through.
Oh yeah,
at late January.
We got some of that.
Yeah.
It was wild driving in from Milwaukee. It was like 9 a.m. It wasn't supposed to snow until 1 p.m. and like these big snowflakes are falling. It's like, no, this is gonna be an adventure. And by the end of the night, I was like, I'm just gonna grab a hotel room in Janesville. I gotta stay out here for the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, people who grew up in Wisconsin know that they know when to call it quits.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then there's people that do not know when to call it quits. And those are the people that usually see in the ditch that just.
Oh yeah. You know. And you know, it's not from lack of trying. I do have a 4-wheel drive SUV, so I'm still willing to be like, no, this is too dangerous for a 2-hour drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. I'm still stuck in Wisconsin, so let's talk a little bit about Lake Geneva. Do you know much about Lake Geneva?
I've been a few times, but I mostly from a vacationing capacity.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm about the same bit of knowledge. I knew there used to be a Playboy Club up there. And now it's still a very popular resort. Name escapes me.
The Grand Geneva.
Geneva National. Yeah.
Yeah, Geneva National, the Grand Geneva.
Yep. And yeah, it's mostly just my knowledge is it's a vacation destination, and a lot of wealthy folks from around Chicago have homes around there.
Right, and that's a lot of it. What a lot of it is, but you know, a lot of people don't realize back in the, you know, the 1930s and 40s, and it was a pretty much a gangster boom place. You know, I mean, a lot of gangsters, you know, traipse through there, and Capone and
just far enough outside Chicago, hey?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, I did like I was telling you before the show, I used to do our show in Maxwell Mansion house. It's a hotel. It's a boutique hotel, and that had so much activity, but it's also a very peaceful place, and people who are experiencing anything but you know, getting you know, having drinks and having weddings there and stuff like that. So it's a very beautiful place, you know. But there is with a lot of old buildings these days, you know, even the history aspect kind of transcends into something paranormal. I mean, you know, it's just, you hear the history of some of these old places, and all of a sudden it's just like, there's got to be a ghost story to that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
totally.
But yeah. So talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you guys have been wanting to do, but it's on your list to do that you just haven't got to. I know there's probably a couple places that we got to get here, or we got to get there.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, especially being, you know, being physically located in one place is tough when you want to cover the whole country. We recently were down near Missouri and Alton, Illinois, and it is hard when it's 17 hours of driving for that whole trip in one weekend, and then you're just kind of like exhausted for a week afterwards.
Sure.
So, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've been thinking about doing and wanting to do are the places that are a little further out. You know, I want to go to Wolf Creek Lodge in Oregon. I want to hit up Pennhurst and go down to Crescent. So there's a lot of stuff like that, you know, we've toyed with the idea of like, if we rented an apartment in West Virginia for a single month, what would that cost? So you know, doing crazy stuff like that is where you end up. But you know, those are sort of our biggest aspirations, are bringing those stories to light and increasing the awareness of the history of those places.
I think that what you guys do is really fantastic, because a lot of people do need to know about all these places, and people would love to be able to experience these places, you know, through your website or whatnot. But I'm kind of seeing too that, man, if you guys had the financial backing to actually do all these things, to go all these places and to document all these places. And
We've been really lucky. A lot of the places will reach out to them and tell them about our mission, and the fact that we want to preserve that history. We see these places. In fact, just recently in East Troy, the Cobblestone Inn, classic haunting, got torn down. We see these places disappearing.
Right,
and we want them to stick around. We were in Alton, Illinois, McPike Mansion. We want these locations around, and when we talk to these locations and their owners and say, this is what we're doing versus, let us come in and film a show here for free or something like that, they're much more willing to open the door and say, yeah, come in, get some awesome photos, and we'll work together on the story and present it in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past you guys. Actually, maybe in the future, somebody might want to, approach you and say, hey, I think we could make this into a really good, TV show or something where we could, make
or
people
at least sponsor.
aware. Yeah, or be sponsored in that sense. I would not, just because the idea and the concept is fantastic. I mean, and it's all about preserving the history, and I love all that, the historical, especially like going down to Gettysburg, or to anywhere in the Civil War battlefields or something like that. That type of history that people don't know about.
Absolutely.
You wanna be able to share that in a way where people can understand it and not be afraid of it, or not be, oh, I don't want to hear about that. But making it interesting enough, that other people will share that. So have you ever had any aspirations of going down to like Gettysburg or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so have either one of you ever been there by yourselves, or?
Unfortunately, no. I had an opportunity this past summer, but it was between driving to Gettysburg or going to Eastern State, and I had to go with Eastern State for my first time out there.
Right. So talk a little bit about your Eastern State trip.
Sure. So Eastern State for me was not a ghost hunting trip. That was just the girlfriend and I were in Philadelphia visiting some of her family. And I had a really great opportunity to bring a camera and get a number of hours in the building during that tour, just getting photographs. She will tell you, I am the most annoying person when I have a camera. I'm
constantly that way.
Can you move? I don't want to be here with you. I want to be here with my camera. Right, and ultimately, we ended up with some awesome images. Again, hey, they're on hauntedus.com. Shamelessly plugging that. But ultimately, it was really, really awesome hearing about the stories within the walls, the various hauntings of, the locksmith in the yard who felt somebody tug on him and turned around and there was nothing there, and being in that actual place and hearing more about it is incredible.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And while we were there, we visited a number of other places. The goodness, I'm going to blank on all their names now. The Hill Physic House and USS Olympia. Other big hauntings that are also attractions that I could drag my girlfriend, who's not into ghosts at all, around to.
Right.
I understand.
Yeah. So you guys were just when you were talking a little bit earlier about I think you said you were in Missouri.
Yeah. So we went to Missouri State Penitentiary while we were down in Alton, Illinois.
Okay. So talk about that. Talk a little bit about what you experienced or what you had found and when you were there.
Sure. Mitch, you want to take that?
Yeah. So Missouri State in particular is a very, very interesting place. It from the exterior now anyway, it's this understandably huge wall with a large mason structure in the middle where you enter. But pretty much as soon as you enter, you are greeted with a map that shows you what the complex used to look like. And as gigantic as it is now, it is probably only about 40% of the size of what it was originally.
Oh, wow.
So the area where you come in was pretty much dead center in the middle of the prison at one point. And so you get this shock of the scope of the place. Because there's so much there still, but that's just a small fraction of the complex as a whole. And the tour guides kind of go into it when you're there, that the prison's function and the little mini economy that it ran pretty much helped build Jefferson City, the capital of the state of Missouri, around it. And there's so much energy still captured there. You get to go through 2 main cell blocks out of the huge complex there. And just being in a place like that is remarkable. And just the sheer size of it is just doubled up upon by the sheer number of people that can be jammed into a place like that.
Right.
Cell blocks made for 400 people end up housing 4,000. And just being in a space like that and just thinking about it is crazy. And having the opportunity to experience that in person is something I think anyone with an interest in that kind of thing ought to do. And there's just a weight of a certain variety of suffering in some of those areas. And I think they kind of steer you away from a lot of those particularly heavy areas, maybe with the exception of the gas chamber, which is just a quick run through at the very end. But there's one area in particular, I think they called it the dungeon, which was solitary before solitary existed, which was, it's solitary confinement with less regulations. So it's just awful. And they told the story of someone who was put in these rooms which had no light at all. It was a locked room inside a locked room inside a locked hallway with no windows in any of those areas. They locked someone in there for over 2 straight years. And wow. And that's the kind of energy that you work with when you go into a place like that. So we stopped at a lot of places during our trip, including several places that were multiple things and had multiple lives. But by far the heaviest life of any location that we visited during that trip was at Missouri State. There's a lot to be had there, and I'm happy to see that people are still going to experience it, because it's a tough thing to experience, but it's definitely something that still needs to be done.
Yeah, my sensor board needs to experience it. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, right. Right. So I'm sitting here with Brandon Rugzie and Mitch Goth from Haunted US.
Howdy.
It's just been, learning more about what you guys have been doing. Let's talk a little more about, let's say, when you were in Alton. Was there some place that you guys had something really good happen in Alton? Did you investigate in Alton?
So it's interesting. We centered this trip around gathering information. We didn't actually investigate in Alton, but we were able to visit and hang out with Sharon at McPike Mansion and David over at Mineral Springs.
Okay.
Both fantastic people and fantastic locations, and I'm sure we'll go into detail a little further about that. But our actual investigation in the area was the Cheney Mansion. Which is up in Jerseyville. We were there the night that a thunderstorm and a couple tornadoes just barely missed it. So it was an interesting night for everybody involved.
There you go.
Yeah. And names like Jerseyville. I mean, there's probably so many different towns, and even in Wisconsin and Illinois, that I have never even heard of. And
definitely.
I drove through Footville. And I to be honest with you, I was like, did I just read that right? Did that say Footville?
Someone with a very specific set of kinks started that town.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's some of these towns are just kind of drive-by towns, but then there's some of them have, really good charm with them,
Yeah.
Did you ever drive through a small town and think, man, I would really like to walk into that building and talk to How many times do you guys do that?
Oh, so frequently when we're going to places, especially places like Alton, where there's a lot of open ground between us and them. When we're going through town, at least 2 or 3 times we're pointing at places like, oh man, I wish we could get in there. Look at that. That looks awesome.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
That definitely is something that we're constantly looking at as we're going through.
Yeah. It's one of the things that seeing some of these old buildings that are was a bank, and then all of a sudden it's now years later it's a bar, but it looks like a bank, but it's a bar. And it's just like the history alone and that it's like, okay, I want to know the story of how that transferred into looked like a bar or a bank and turned into this bar. I mean, even the stories behind that.
History is layered. History is as layered as the paint on the walls.
Exactly. That's probably the best way to say it. And so I used to love driving. Me and my wife would take drives through different places up north and see small towns, and it was just, you wonder, it's like, gosh,
totally.
The history of it doesn't even have to be Wisconsin. It could be anywhere from Missouri to wherever. I mean, one of the places that I would love to go to would be Tombstone.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, just the history implications of that. I mean, it's just beyond me. That and Deadwood and so that whole aspect of just learning that history and researching that is probably not everybody's cup of tea, but
is it specifically the ghost town aspect? For Deadwood and Tombstone, I think those are both ghost towns. What about like Bannock for you?
Oh, I don't know.
That's way up in Montana, though.
Yeah, Bannock, Montana. Yeah, that and Lodi is another one.
Of course, Cerro Gordo.
Yeah,
probably say that wrong.
Yep. Even the Gunslinger's Gulch, Karen Broussard that I had on my show. She had some activity when I was interviewing her, in the bar where she was doing the saloon where she was doing the show.
Wow.
And I want to go there so bad because that whole history of that is that a town being put together like that.
Well, and looking at small towns and the kind of the drive-through places that we see and those buildings that we point at and think, what is in there? Those are the stories that we really want to capture. Sure. It's not hard to get a haunted story from Waverly Hills. It is not hard to find a story from Eastern State. It is really, really hard to get that haunted story from Footville.
Understood.
We weigh them the same. It is the haunted history of America that we want to preserve, and those two things are equal in our eyes.
Right. And I would totally agree with that. And some of these places, I think that with what you guys are doing with Haunted US, it's you're putting stuff on the map that wasn't on the map that should have been on the map. You know what I mean? I mean, you're actually trying to find places that actually, not only just has, paranormal activity or something like that, but the history implications.
Exactly.
People want to read that, and that's why I said that. It's just, reading that and seeing the history, it not only helps either that business or even the town itself. If people go to these places and be like, I saw this article and I saw the picture on Haunted US, and all of a sudden, we're here and look at this building over here, or look at this shop here. I really want to go there, So, I mean, it's also helping, other small businesses and
absolutely
other, the traffic alone aspect of it. So, so what you guys are doing is awesome. I mean, it's just, it's just really, for everybody to try to experience.
I mean, we're here to help. We're here to be stewards of that history and help in spaces where maybe that tourism market isn't as high as it could be.
Right. Oh, I think that there's a whole vast gamut of possibilities with that. You know what I mean? And so,
definitely.
So let's talk a little bit to you, Brandon, first. How, and this is the cliche question for every podcaster that does a paranormal podcast. How did you get into the paranormal?
So it's kind of a goofy story. I grew up in what we believed to be a haunted house. And the story is really long, and I'll spare you guys the long story, but ultimately it sparked an interest. And from there, it was, unsolved mysteries and unexplained files, and every show that was on in the 90s getting hyped up about ghosts. And like, oh, I'm constantly looking through TV Guide to see if there's a show about ghosts on.
Did you just say TV Guide?
I just said TV Guide.
Oh my God.
You don't look old enough to know about
I just dated myself. My apologies.
No,
you don't look old enough to be talking
I
about
heard
that.
TV Guide, I had this flashback of my mother going, "No, that's my TV Guide. Don't take that."
It was thrown. It was always thrown back and forth.
Yeah, it was. Oh my gosh, that brings.
And they wouldn't get done doing the stupid puzzles so you could use it.
Yeah.
My mom was always using puzzle.
I was like, and you're like, what is this? And then half the page is torn off, and or there's like food on it, or it's just So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I just had that flashback of TV Guide. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh man.
Go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry.
So from that point, growing up with those shows, I got into high school, and I had friends who were similarly interested in spooky stuff, and there was an old haunted road. Now being a very fact-based group, we have to say, maybe not, but it was the perfect place for teenagers to go and spook themselves on a Friday night. So we spent a lot of time down there. And then college came, and I sort of said, okay, well, this was fun. I'm going to tuck it away for a long time.
Right.
And following college, I saw an ad. In fact, a friend sent it to me, an ad for a public paranormal investigation. And I went expecting nothing at all. I was assuming that like somebody was going to jump out in a sheet at some point during it. And I was like, this is going to be nothing. I loved the group so much that I put in to join, and I was with them for 5 years.
Wow. Cool. What was the name? Can you name the group?
Yeah, sure. So it's Noah and Gravy running Paranormal Milwaukee.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was awesome working with them for a while. And during that time, we went to Edinburgh Manor and had a tire blowout on our van. And Mitch and I ended up in the car together. And that's where Mitch's story picks up of us starting Haunted US.
There are no coincidences.
None.
So, Mitch, same question.
Yeah. So I grew up not really believing in ghosts or the paranormal, or really giving it much thought at all. But early in high school, I want to say freshman year, I moved in just down the street from a friend of mine in the same grade, and his family was all ghost hunters.
That's cool.
Which at first I thought was, well, that's a little weird. But after a few months of living near them, they offered to take me on an investigation to see what it was like. And the experiences I had on that investigation kind of had me hooked for life. We went down to a place called the Manor down in Beloit, Wisconsin, which was just a big empty house that they'd converted into a restaurant some years before that had gone defunct. So it was just a big empty restaurant, but supremely spooky and a lot of activity. I went back there with that group about a half dozen times. And that location actually served as part of an inspiration to pursue a project like Haunted US personally, because the Manor no longer is there anymore. We drove by there on our way down to the Egyptian Theater a few weeks ago. It's being turned into like a bank now. The whole building is gone. The property is flattened. There's no evidence that a place called the Manor ever existed there.
That's sad.
Yeah, and if I had been doing what I'm doing now, then there would be a record of that. There would be an established thing that says here's what was there, here's what it looked like, here's what the history was, and here's what the paranormal claims within it and around it were. Which now the best I can hope for is that the bank calls us up one day and says, hey, some spooky stuff is happening. And were wondering why. Well, I can probably tell you why, but that's a long shot at this point. But after that, I delved really deeply into the paranormal field. By senior year of high school, I was the guy who everybody wanted to call to turn their house parties into a seance.
Nice.
And that went on into college. I was always the guy who could douse really well. I was a good dowsing rod user. Was the person who so I went to a school that at the time the campus was about half abandoned, so they had a lot of empty old buildings. And I just asked them a lot of times, hey, could I investigate that building? They said, yeah, okay. So I spent a lot of time investigating buildings on campus. That thing we were talking about earlier, just seeing a building in town and saying, gosh, I wonder what goes on in there. I've done that a lot. I call it cold calling because that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
You just walk into a place that looks like it's got some history and you just say, have you ever experienced anything spooky in this building?
I've done that too.
Yeah, I've done that.
You'd be surprised what some people say sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And I spent a good long time doing stuff like that, just digging around, finding new stories to experience and to tell. And then that led me to the same group, Paranormal Milwaukee. Wanted to get a little bit more structure in life, and get with a team for the first time in what had been probably 6 or 7 years at that point. And then came Haunted US, the project that could fulfill all my spooky passions.
Yeah, very nice.
So do you guys take like guest articles or anything like that?
Not currently, just because we're very stringent about the way that we handle history, and
Sure.
Mitch being a voracious historian and incredibly fast writer, we haven't had any need to.
Oh, okay.
What we do have is a team of editors that we work with.
Sure.
Calling out Kat.
Yeah.
So big ups to them. We really appreciate the work, and we are looking to branch out in our articles, and there's a chance that could be something we do in the
because
future.
I might be able to be persuaded to do an article or two on techniques of investigation.
Shane, that would be fantastic. Let's keep in touch. We can definitely do that.
Because I'm working on a book with another group of PhD level people. We'll have that thing out this summer.
Awesome.
So we're working on that book, and so once that's done or more done, then I might be willing to, write some articles about, how to do a real scientific investigation,
Sure.
how to find the facts, and how to get through the bull crap, and
totally
how to analyze data and how to do things like that. It could be a text section on the end of the website.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's keep in touch and we can talk about it. I'd also, frankly, the way that you're investigating, I'd love to tag along and see what you're doing.
I'll tell you what. When you guys do that Michigan one, let me know. That's only like an hour and a half from my place.
Oh, heck
there you go.
And Mitch, I was telling him about
and I'll bring the equipment, and I'll bring all kinds of things you have never ever seen or even heard of.
That is exactly the sort of thing we like.
Yeah.
So
So you can also look on our YouTube channel. There's a couple episodes called Tech Talk with Shane.
Yeah, you can
and
see
he goes over some of those things about things that he's created, including the board.
The interesting
that's what it's
thing,
called.
The threateningly named the board.
the board. Yeah.
And the thing about it is, my goal as a skeptic / science guy, like that, was to take the human subjectivity out of it.
Yeah, bias is such a huge piece of what we do.
So what we will do is, we'll do a session or whatever, we'll collect baselines for hours, and then we'll do sessions, and then we'll do actual statistical analysis of the data. Say, okay, during this session, when we asked it to, ask an entity to create a, magnetic field in this room, did they actually do it in the time that we told them, or did they not?
That's incredible. Yeah.
And
I would love to be a part of that.
The great thing is in the end, not only do you have a few little, instead of having the little spooky clips and random things, I have gigabytes of data, and I have analysis and graphs and charts and, you know, all
and
kinds
that's what has the potential to be peer reviewed and be something that we could test against in the future.
And yes, it is. And another thing I like to do is, if I can get into a location several times, I will do the investigation. But because the consistency of the automated investigations and the consistency of the data logging techniques, I can literally compare from time to time to time and session to session. And I can also combine those statistics kind of like they do in medical studies, where they'll take a study from 20 different hospitals, they'll combine it into one conglomerate study for a particular, you know, thing that's happening all at once.
Have you ever tested like the same set of variables in two different locations on like the same
Absolutely
night?
I do it all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If he hasn't done it, it'd be amazement if he hadn't.
Yeah. So I do that, but I also, like I say, if I go to, we have some places local I've been to half a dozen times or more.
Oh, nice.
And I have hours worth of collected data. But I've also done a lot of automated sessions. So I can go back and combine those sessions into one study.
Sure.
And then you can start to see bigger picture things.
Yep, bigger patterns.
And you'll start to see patterns in things that nobody else would ever see. You know, you see weird things. Like, you know, one that I'd found recently was, I kept getting, you know, people kept saying, hey, my K2 is going off. My K2 is going off. And it kept going off throughout the night in this one location. And then I kind of pushed it out of my side at first. I was like, whatever. It's just a K2 meter. It does its thing and whatever. But then later on, when I started going through the data, I realized that every 10 minutes and 8 seconds, there is a massive burst of EMF.
Okay. So it's a, you know, regulator somewhere in the building.
Yeah, well, so what it ended up being was the sprinkler system out in the backyard kicks on in 10-minute and 8-second cycles. And every time that pump comes on, that electric motor puts a giant plume of EMF through the whole building. Well, when you're filming your YouTube show, you don't have the ability to slow down and look at data like that. That makes well, and the thing is not only can you not, but if you're not logging everything that happens every second, like I am, you would never see that pattern. You just assume that if you happen to ask the entity, hey, can you touch my K2 meter? And all of a sudden it goes crazy, but you don't know that it's right on one of those 10-minute and 8-second boundaries.
Yeah, right.
You think you got stuff and nothing happened.
Right. So that begs the question of how much actually that happens. You know what I mean? Where people, there's a bigger picture to this. There's a bigger spectrum where people, instead of, you know, they go to these locations, like Shane was saying, he goes to locations several different times, but for him to figure out that was because of the sprinkler system, how many other investigators have gone to that same place and said, yes, this is what happens, you know, all the time, and this happens at this time and this time, and then Shane comes along and says, it's because of the sprinkler.
Yep.
You know, it's because, I mean, and so how long did that, and so his brain is very important in the paranormal field, in my thought, you know what I mean? You know, so having him to do stuff like that and to log this, but that's the whole thing. People don't want to take the time to do that type of stuff because it is tedious.
Well, it's kind of boring if you're not a nerd.
Right.
And,
you know.
So still, one of the other things that this affects, if we look at the scale of hauntings in general, a lot of people believe that their homes are haunted. And when people will ask, my home's haunted, what should I do about it? The first response that Mitch and I always have is keep a notebook, write down every time it happens.
Yeah,
because what you'll see is like
right to the minute or second.
Exactly. Man, it happens every night at 10:06 when that train passes my house. Oh wait, it's probably something to do with that.
To do with the train.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Right. And not to say that everybody, you know, have stuff like this happen, you know, but it's just when you go to major places, especially places like Penhurst or, you know, the other insane asylums, or even in Sheboygan, you know, I mean, there's bigger places with so much variances that what it could be. Now, for Shane to be able to take his board into like Sheboygan or Penhurst or something like that in a large area or something and just leave it there.
Yeah, leave it there for a week. Heck, I
Right.
don't care.
And leave it there
I'll find
for a
every
week.
pattern there is and everything there is.
And that I think would be, something where that would be beneficial. It not only kind of curtails some of the other nuances that people forget about, but it also brings things together saying there is a pattern here and we should explore it, so that when people investigate later, they're like, we know that there's a pattern here. Let's see if we can't replicate that. Let's see if we can't, do this.
Sure.
So his idea of doing that in a broader spectrum is just, to me, is genius, because it's just, especially for paranormal people.
And the other thing is you do get things that are not explainable directly.
Right.
I mean, there are times when you will get fully statistic. You'll do an EVP session and, you'll do what I call the sensor walk, where you say, you just start asking it to touch all these different things. And there are certain locations, not very many, but few, and certain times we've had it statistically hit almost everything. It's like crazy. So there's something there. That's the 20% of my, I'm 80% skeptic. That's the 20% believer part, because if I never got anything ever and it always was just nominal readings and patterns that were easy to find, I'd have left it a long time ago. But but 10-20% of the time you will get things that just temporally line up and with questioning or visual effects, and you're just like, I don't have a physical explanation for it. And the great thing is I have it logged. If somebody wants to go back and review my data, or if they want to see the video from it again, because I videotape every session with a wide angle camera, it can see the whole entire room at once, basically.
Nice. Yeah, that's the
and
way
then
to do it.
I have that camera, the computer syncs it to the data. So I can go right down to the second. And if I see something on the camera, I can go look at the data. Or if I see something in the data, I can go look at the camera, and vice versa. And of course, it records audio with it. So I have the audio from the room. And there are times and there are strange things that do come up. Definitely statistically significant, definitely repeatable, so
awesome.
There is something to it.
And none of that is to say that, like, going somewhere with a voice recorder and setting it down is wrong or bad. It's just, different ways to investigate. And I think it's awesome that you found such a consistent method.
It's hard with subjective methods, because you could play that same audio to 10 different people and get 10 different words.
Yep. The classic example is, Ghost Adventures saying, here's exactly what we think it's saying, and it's on screen as the audio is playing, so you only hear that.
It's mental suggestion, Predolia.
Yeah,
and I try to get rid of that.
I think that a lot of that is kind of what's taken over, TV, as is, it's just, all the ghost shows and everything. I used to watch them, a long time ago. Every once in a while, I'll find one that I'm interested in. I had the Ghost Brothers on, or not Ghost Brothers, like the OPO, Ghost in the Hood, on the show, and those guys were great. I mean, and they kept things simple, and it was people like that. But when you're all for the entertainment aspect. It's just it kind of takes the mystery out of it. You know what I mean? It takes that moment of, what if they really sat down and looked? I mean, they could have, but when you get it all chopped up and into an hour show, all that other footage that was 6-8 hours, probably it's pretty boring. I just talked to somebody about that. They said, "Oh yeah, it's very boring."
Yeah, it's definitely like watching Kate try to review it.
It's not like we just show up and all this stuff happens and and then we go home.
The other problem is, like, a show like that, you're worried about your advertising budget and everything like that. You have to produce something that's compelling to get the views to stay a show. So I'm not personally calling anything into question, but there is an element of, like, you have to produce something, and it's something you can't control. So how much of that reaction is
watching lab equipment is boring. So they probably don't want to do that.
Right. So I mean, that's a lot of people have taken to YouTube, which to me right now is really oversaturated.
It is.
I mean, with content creators, all that, music, everything. Everybody wants their voice to be heard, which is fine, and if YouTube is the place to do it, then do it. We have a show on YouTube, I mean, we don't have a ton of followers, but that's not, the numbers is not important to me. I was able to, if one person sees this show and says, hey, I really like these people's website, I want to go check it out. And
heck yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's what it's about. It's not about getting 10,000 or 50,000, followers or, this or that. It's just, all it takes is one person.
Totally.
To make it, to see that message and say, hey, I really can relate to that, And so, doing what you guys do and, just putting the information out there. And like Mitch said before, if the building's not there anymore, if I was there before, I could document what it was and, what happened there. And also people do know. And the sad thing about having buildings be raised like that is really starting to irritate me, because they've been happening a little bit more around Lake Geneva. And I'm just like, I beg them, please leave it alone. Please leave the history aspect of it alone.
And it's tough. It's tough because those cities need those venues to do things with. It's hard. It's hard to begrudge them doing things that the community needs, but at the same time, there's an element of like, there are layers of history there that we're just cutting away.
Right. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, so, but I get the whole financial applications of it, from the town itself or whatever, but it just, there's some buildings that, probably could have been a lot of different things. And I'm not into politics, and thank God, but I just really, you see a good piece of history in a building, and then the next day you drive by and it's gone.
Yeah. We actually saw a really awesome example is Sloss Furnace. If you guys remember Sloss Furnace, featured on TV programs, very famous haunt. And now they don't allow investigations, but they do have a really awesome museum about the history and the people who worked there and those stories. So we love to see stuff like that, where it's not fully getting rid of this sort of monument to our past, but still able to look forward and maybe not have people climbing rusty stairs way high up for a nasty drop, but still sharing that history with everybody.
Right. Yeah. And you guys, it sounds like, you guys are doing that, even if, let's say 5 years down the road and all these buildings, let's say, 20% of these buildings that you did document and investigate or do whatever are not there anymore. At least they have that on your website.
Absolutely.
You can build that as in, hey, if somebody says, hey, I don't know, what happened to the house, and I wanted to know, and say, hey, this person could say, just like being on YouTube, they could see this, say, yeah, go check out this website, Haunted US, and you want to know the history of that building, it's right there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that it goes hand in hand. You know what I mean? So
100%. Yeah. We're always looking for those opportunities. And obviously, if anybody listening to this or watching this has any access to a haunted place that they want documented, reach out to us. We're always available for that sort of thing.
Yeah. Right. So I think that we're gonna wrap, but I want you guys, plug yourselves, I mean, tell people where they can find you, and if you've got anything else to say, in regards to the website or yourselves personally, go right ahead.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we are hauntedus.com. We are available on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I think we have a Pinterest. We have a Pinterest. And ultimately, our whole deal is sharing stories and sharing history, preserving it, and working with these locations to make sure that they're well known. So, feel free to reach out to us if you have a story from one of these places, or especially if you own a haunted location or you have access to it and you would like it documented, please reach out to us.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on being a resource for paranormal enthusiasts, from the just mildly interested to the dedicated paranormal researcher. So if you have any interest in the paranormal at all, take a look at our website, and you might find that the biggest, baddest haunted locations in the United States of America might be closer to home than you think.
Sure.
Right. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and I want to thank Brandon and Mitch from
Yeah, you guys are awesome.
hauntedus.com.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
You can check out their website. They've got a lot of good content, I'm sure, coming up soon.
Absolutely.
And you need to check out their website. It's simply fantastic. I want to be able to tell everybody you can see this episode on YouTube and Facebook, Facebook Parapost Network, and you can also see it on my personal page. So on that note, it's about time. So yes, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.